I am beyond thrilled to be here today with my dear friend, Sunayna Tuteja. I first met Sunayna a few years ago during crypto winter when we were both still speaking at a bunch of different crypto events and oftentimes to an audience of like 10 people. Sunayna was like a breath of fresh air. She was doing everything in her power to explain the opportunities in crypto to her team at TD Ameritrade, where she was working at the time, as well as the firm's retail and institutional customer base. And the first time I heard her speak, I was super impressed by how substantively deep she was and her ability to turn really complex concepts into something that anyone could understand. Sunayna was always also saying something a little different from everybody else. And it was pretty clear that in her free time, she must have been spending a ton of time thinking deeply about the crypto space. Sunayna's had a very cool career, including her former role as head of digital assets and DLT at TD Ameritrade. And of course, now Sunayna is the first ever Chief Innovation Officer for the Federal Reserve. And what an incredible time to be in that role, Sunayna. It would be awesome if you could share your background with us, including how you decided to join the Fed. And I'd also love to hear how you ended up in crypto.
Well, thank you, Colleen, for that kind intro. As always, I am delighted to be spending quality time with you, nerding out on our many obsessions. Also want to extend my gratitude to the Real Vision team for giving us this opportunity to engage. Throughout my career, as I reflect on the many assignments I've had, I'm actually super grateful that it all comes down to kind of these undercurrents of leading change and innovation at the nexus of finance, technology, and policy. Lots of different assignments as investor, operator, builder, did a lot of work here in North America, but also in Asia. But for me, the common denominator has always been, how are we in a purposeful manner harnessing the power of these frontier technologies, but doing it in a way that we're able to break down barriers that still persist in financial systems. Right? We could all argue that, financial services at large in North America are pretty solid, but still it's not as big a tent as it could be. Right? And so for me, in all the assignments I've had, that's frankly been the mission, the zeal perhaps, is, how are we leveling that playing field and making financial services much more approachable and accessible. And frankly, that was a through line that also took me down the proverbial rabbit hole, as many of the viewers here could probably relate to when it comes to crypto. I first heard about this, mysterious thing called Bitcoin at a holiday party in like 2010. Clearly, I needed to go to better holiday parties, but it was actually a work holiday party. And I was working at a traditional financial services institution, investment banking in Canada. And I heard about this thing called Bitcoin, and I didn't really know much about it. And, the conversation around it really was a bunch of bankers dunking on it. And I didn't know anything, so I couldn't contribute to the conversation. But it, curiosity, for better or for worse, has always been my one talent. And if I don't know something, then I have to go down the rabbit hole. And I recall going home that Friday night and just, learning about it. And, there was no Cambrian explosion of content that we have around crypto today. Like, I cannot keep up with the podcasts and the newsletters and the great, fun, also dramatic content on Twitter. But none of that existed. So you had like these pockets. I, came across the white paper. Full transparency, I didn't understand majority of the white paper. Angels did not start singing to me right away. I had to read it many, many times. And but what it did was it piqued this curiosity, which to this day is what keeps me excited about crypto, that is just so multidisciplinary. And there's always something new to learn, right? So if you're curious by nature, this is like the best ecosystem you could, be part of. So yeah, I just started learning about it. Then I slowly started going to meetups. My cheeky closing to that story is my boyfriend at that time was also in traditional finance and iBanking. And at one point he said, "What's wrong with you? Like, are you becoming like those weird Bitcoin people now?" Like, and he kind of was like dunking on me a little bit. And I was just irritated by his lack of curiosity and him kind of, admonishing me for following this trail. And then, as I like to say, the best trade of my life. I dumped the boyfriend, bought the Bitcoin.
That is a very good trade. And it was a great trade for the crypto community too. So thank you to that ex-boyfriend. And how did you end up sort of championing a Bitcoin and crypto within TD Ameritrade? Like what led to you being head of digital there?
Yeah, so, I was in my role as the global head of emerging tech and strategic partnership. And, my portfolio really and my mandate at that time was, interrogating and understanding these frontier technologies. And, I'm sure we could play buzzword bingo here, between AI and ML and, data science and all that fun stuff. And, DLT and blockchain. Like, remember, this is like 2014, 2015, when all the narrative was, it was all about blockchain and not Bitcoin. And I'm so happy that we've kind of evolved past that. But,
yes.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I'm really happy, the flippening that we've seen. And we'll talk about the other flippening around talent and risk, which, we've talked about. But, and so that was part of my portfolio. I mean, personally, I was, becoming more and more enthused, but also curious about, the development that we started to see within crypto, the new chains that were coming on, and then the use cases that the developers were starting to build on top of it. But for us, from a TD Ameritrade perspective, it really was driven by the voice of the customer, right? Because we came at this inflection point where, yes, I was educating our leaders, our board of directors, along with other colleagues. Frankly, one of my biggest advocates and champions in this journey was our chief risk officer, right? Which, most people do not associate with, but we took the path of how could we do this in a prudent manner? And there were many meetings where I was getting laughed out of the room or yelled out of the room, which is cost of doing business when you're leading change and innovation. But the inflection point really was the voice of the customer, right? Especially our active trader customer, as you know, Colleen, from the Chicago ecosystem, who are very comfortable trading derivatives, options, higher order trading strategies. And they tend to be one of the early adopters of new technologies and new asset classes. So, and we started to hear a lot from that segment about, hey, I want to do this, but I don't want to have to go somewhere else. How do I do it, all in one place, right? And then the other thing is we also had a pretty large segment of what I like to call the crypto curious, where, retail client, institutional clients, where they were like, wait, what is this about? Should I be learning about it? And so our thesis really was, it's about education, not evangelism, right? And our approach really was, we have to start from a place of educating people. Because again, even to this day, this entire ecosystem is pretty nascent. It continues to shape shift. And there's a whole lot of complexity built around it. And, a few years ago, it was still a lot more abstraction around all of this. So the approach of, starting with education and then building meaningful products and services, that connected to the expectations of our clients was really the pathway that we took into it. So really starting with the problem statement.
Hey there, revolutionaries. Thanks for tuning in. For more content like this, head over to realvision.com/crypto and get unfiltered access to the most brilliant minds in finance and crypto. Join our community of lifelong learners for exclusive access, unparalleled education, and unbiased insights.